I've been thinking a lot about the damage caused by the bad theology of sin taught in our conservative Christian American churches. Sin, as I was raised, was to mean don't drink, don't chew, and don't date girls that do. A list of rules, and we were always told, like, Christianity's the one religion where it's all about God's grace. It's God's grace. It's free grace. And you can't be this, and this. And there was a long list of rules, and thus I grew up in a belief that God is mad at me all the time. And what the divine presence of heaven is this mean old God keeping a list of everything I do wrong, a naughty or nice list, just like Santa Claus seeing us when we're sleeping and knowing when we're awake. And if it wasn't for Jesus standing there going, Father, don't kill Paul today, I would have been fried by a zap of lightning. But as I read the story of Jesus now, I don't see a divine presence of heaven that looks anything like that at all, or a Jesus that said his presence represented what that divine goodness, divine love looks like. Jesus didn't go around sitting with sinners saying, I disagree with your lifestyle. In fact, it was religious people who hated him passionately because they didn't think he was tough enough on sinners. Jesus had this interesting idea of sin. He said, you've heard it said, don't commit adultery. But I say, if you lust after a woman, you've already committed adultery in your heart. Now, a lot of Christians will say, see, Jesus is setting the law standards even higher than the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Scripture, as I like to say in a non-colonizing way of the Hebrew Torah. But that's not what was happening in this text. What is happening is Jesus is saying, you guys think you're amazing because you have this rule that says don't commit adultery. And so you think as long as you're not committing adultery, you're good. And like religious people today, those religious people could find all kinds of loopholes to allow them to go right up to the line of the rule and still say, I'm favored by God. But that person, they're not, because they do X, Y, Z that I don't do. Jesus said, you think you're great because you don't violate this very technical rule. But I say, if you look on a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. What Jesus is saying is, the sin is not about the rule, nor is sin about a list of rules at all. Sin is about relationship. And how do we treat someone else in relationship? Do I possess this woman or an attractive person that I see walking down the street for my needs and my pleasure without considering the humanity of that person, or how some of this might impact other relationships in my life? Nor do I think, if it really isn't harming a relationship, then it's not sin. Jesus said, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And it was this symbiotic relationship between heaven and humanity to be reconciled to their goodness, and say, doing something extremely human, like masturbating for a 16-year-old child, isn't sin. It's human. It's when that act moves into a violation of relationship, we could call that sin. And what would the world be if we started living this way? Jesus said, you've heard it said, don't murder. But I say if you call your brother Raka, you're the one worthy of hellfire. Again, saying, here's the rule, don't murder. So you're finding all kinds of loopholes to treat people terribly, but still be like, but I'm not a murderer like those people, those pro-choice people over there. Jesus is like, okay, you follow the rules, but how do you interrelate with people around you? If you have malice in your heart and call them Raka, which loosely translated means fool, or it may even, some I've read say it means asshole. Again, it's about relationship, not following a rule. Yeah, you don't murder, but you disregard people around you, so I'm not impressed by your rule following. If we started to say to each other, I care more about relationship with you than a list of rules or fidelity to or fealty to a theology, a need to prove my supremacy over you, wouldn't the world be a better place if we were released from those painful ways of living life? We could stop heaping shame on one another, shame that often leads to people giving up and saying, well, I'm going to hell, so I'll just be a terrible person, which is really what my story is in my life. Just like, well, God hates me, so I better enjoy life here because eternity's going to be hell, literally. But Jesus said that's not what sin is. Sin is doing something that is a violation of your identity and a violation of the relationship with each other. That's the word sozo, the Greek word sozo, translated as salvation, really means to be reconciled to your true identity. And boy, if all we ever wanted to do was point people to their true identity. You did this thing that hurt me today, but I know that's not who you are, so we're going to work it through. Couldn't this be a better life for human beings? I'm Pastor Paul. I like to take the Bible and make it apprehendable. And if you like what I do, subscribe to this channel, like and share this message, and go to my website, pastor-paul.com. See how you can support the work we do and get on our email list to hear about upcoming events and fun things we do. Have an amazing day.